Welcome back to theCUBE's live stream here in San Diego at FinOps X 2026. We're unpacking FinOps and its impact to the cost side, of course, the revenue being generated, the value being created with AI is off the charts. Our next is Ben Pippenger, co-founder of Zylo, here is on theCUBE. Great to see you from Indianapolis.
Yes, Indianapolis.
All right, we're all the action in the Colts. I'm a Patriots fan, just going to say.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. I don't think I would have been here if I knew that.
Well, two of them.
Oh.
Thanks for coming on, appreciate it. We had to get sports in there somehow, but they're not, they'll have a comeback, we'll see how they do. Although Peyton Manning did a good round last round in the Pro-Am. You guys are doing something different with FinOps in the cloud and SaaS. Explain what you guys do real quick in this context, because it's a little bit of a different approach.
It is a different approach. So we're a SaaS management platform. We really serve the enterprise and help them do a handful of things around the SaaS applications that they're buying. First and foremost is discovering all of them. So we've got a machine learning based model that processes through payment data. It sits on top of about a $90 billion collection of SaaS AI and cloud spend to identify all the different SaaS applications that an organization's buying, wherever it happens in the company. It could be through IT, it could be through your marketing department, it could be an employee expensing a piece of software on their expense card. And when we find it, we normalize that data, we bring it in, we create an inventory of all the SaaS applications that company has and is responsible for.
So you have a data collection mechanism.
Exactly.
And then you run machine learning on it. And then what's the input? Is AI involved there? Is this more of a search paradigm, or is it more?
It's an ML model, so it's an ML model that, again, has a basis of $90 billion in spend data that it uses to then formulate and look at individual payment lines to identify applications that are being purchased.
And what are the hot use cases for you guys right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. So like that's our first step, is we just tell you everything you have. And people are typically shocked what we find. It's usually 2 to 3 times the number of apps and the amount of spend that they have. And the interesting thing, it's usually about the amount of cloud spend. So if you look at their total SaaS spend that they have, it's usually equivalent to what they're spending on the cloud. So it's a significant amount of spend.
So you mean like people who subscribed on the credit card, they're not using the app, there's no way to cancel it?
No, it's a credit card, it's stuff going through POs, it's everything from your Salesforce agreement to somebody buying Asana on a credit card, and everything in between, right? So we uncover all of it, and then we, as I said, inventory it, we keep your contract about that so you know your start and your end date and what you purchased. We also pump in usage data for all those apps as well, so you can see, here's how many licenses we have, here's how many seats we provisioned, and this is what our usage looks like.
So you've been around for a bit, and when we look at what you've been doing, when you think about AI and the impact of what AI has been doing for organizations, you mentioned that you go out there and you kind of expose what spend is happening, which is important, right?
Sure.
Now that we see lines of businesses kind of having more liberties, we had, years ago, we'd have shadow IT, right? Now we have shadow AI, right? And lines of businesses are going out there and spending and doing things without the organizations knowing. So are you seeing a huge uptick, for one? And the second question is, with that uptick, or if you are seeing an uptick, what are you doing for organizations? Are you just kind of giving them advice and saying, hey, this is what it is? Or are you recommending some guardrails and stuff?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing an uptick. So we have a report every year called the SaaS Management Index. Came out in January of this year. And there's 2 stats I'll reference from that. One is in the enterprise segment, we saw Gen AI spend go up 400% year over year. So from 2025 to 2026. We also saw a ton of shadow AI. And for the first time, the #1 expense application, can you guess what it was?
OpenAI.
It was ChatGPT.
ChatGPT,
yeah. So that was the #1 expense app that we found on employees through their expense card. So we're definitely seeing it, it's real, it's happening, both from known spend, but also through shadow spend as well.
One of the trends here is that trying to map cost to value.
Yeah.
You guys doing any work there? Because a lot of people get more productive with ChatGPT, but it may not be the kind of productivity. We're seeing some of those. So how are you guys doing the FinOps thing there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think it's the $1 million question. I think both on the application side and what I'll call the infrastructure side, to be able to really say, hey, we're spending this dollar on AI, what are we getting for it? A lot of the big labs are just now providing access to the data that you need to be able to get to that level of detail. Like for instance, Anthropic just brought out the ability to see user level detail for Claude. So now we can see a user is spending this many tokens on this app. Was it Cowork, was it Claude Code, or was it through the Claude Chat interface? And they also provide some level of metrics around how many PRs were submitted as a result of that engineering person using Claude Code. So there is some of that coming out. I think the more forward progressive thinking SaaS providers that are starting to bake in consumption pricing into their pricing models, there's a couple different ways, flavors of it, but the one I like the most is outcome-based. So when they put outcome-based pricing, they're saying the value is, let's say, a lead created or a case closed. We want to track that for them. We want to make sure that the buyer of that application knows that, hey, for every lead I close, it's going to cost me 10 cents. In that case, it's pretty straightforward, but that's not always the case.
So what's your take on the SaaS apocalypse? Because that was a big rage. Of course, I was negative on it, but I mean, it is, it's just narrative that's come out from the Anthropic team. But that's really not a really right way to look at it, because you mentioned there is a shift to pricing per seat to usage. How does that factor into your business?
So I'll address that in two ways. I think the first one on the SaaS apocalypse, I think it's overblown. I mean, I do think that there are some sort of easy to build SaaS apps that will get replaced. But for the most part, you think about what we're doing or what a Salesforce is doing. I mean, it's a CRM, it's deep in technical knowledge, has lots of capabilities. Like, someone's not going to vibe code that in the weekend and they'd have to maintain it. So I think it's a little bit overblown. But I think on your second question on the consumption side, so we sort of think of it as a spectrum. Like, FinOps talks a lot about the ITAM and FinOps convergence of those two disciplines coming together. I think on the ITAM side, you're really looking at, they're helping you track, specifically on the software asset management side, the products and services you're using to run your business. So what apps are you buying that you're giving to employees to get their job done? On the FinOps side, it's the services you're using to build and run a product, right? So it's the infrastructure layer, right? Now those worlds are coming together, and the convergence zone in the middle is you now have consumption-based SaaS, which for a SAM team to manage consumption-based SaaS, they need skills that FinOps practitioners have. They need to know variable data. They need to get real-time data. That's stuff they haven't dealt with before, but FinOps practitioners have mastered, right? And then on the FinOps side, you have like the platform as a service vendors, the Datadogs, the OpenAI API, the Anthropic's API, which SAM teams are also going to want to get visibility into because they're going to be responsible for those contracts. So you have this like convergence in the middle where those teams need to be collaborating, working together, sharing best practices in order to be really successful.
How does that work in organizations? Because that's intersecting disciplines, a lot of cross-pollination, collaborations needed. What's your observation on how well it's going? I mean, it's change management at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would say we see a spectrum. We see everything from, we now have FinOps buyers of our platform, which we hadn't before. I'd say probably 2 years ago when the foundation added SaaS scopes in, and we started to see FinOps teams starting to take over management of SaaS. So that's like where they've come together under sort of one persona. In the middle, you have where you have common leadership. You may have one person that's sitting over software asset management and FinOps. You may have where they're separate, but they're still collaborating. They're sharing best practices, how you do this. And then you have others where they're siloed. And the siloed is like not going to work. Like, they're going to have to figure out where they sit in the spectrum, what's going to make the most sense for their organization in order to be really successful.
So understanding all of this makes a lot of sense on exposing or just having the visibility into where the money's going. Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. Organizations need to be focused on where they're spending because it's the ROI piece, but not every dollar spent has equal value. So meaning if you're innovating and you're trying new things, it doesn't have the same value as a production workload that's driving towards revenue. So how do you kind of balance that, or do you balance that with regards to reporting? Like, a dollar, a token spent on innovation to try something new versus token spent for production workloads that's directly related to money.
Yeah, I think it's a little different for SaaS, right? Because when we think about AI, it's the AI that's in your SaaS application. So it's your vendors as they're adding in AI capabilities that they're then, as a result, charging you for, right? Because they got to cover their margins. They're also hopefully providing some form of additional value that the buyers can want to pay for, right?
Yeah.
So there's still going to be some experimentation there, right? Like if an app creates some chat assistant that you can use to get your work done, I'm going to try it out and use it, and that could result in me burning some form of unit or whatever it is that they're charging me for. I would say right now, the telemetry probably isn't there to know, if somebody in a SaaS app, are they doing that experimentation, or did that result in, a savings of time, a unit of work that they were trying to accomplish?
Yeah, but this is I think where things are moving towards, SaaS or not. The equivalence of AI adoption is like what was happening in the cloud, right? cloud adoption, the difference is everyone is using AI, right? Not just the tech teams, not just the IT teams, right? So, and then when you're looking at SaaS, now people have access to it and they're using it, so the model is going to have to pivot and change in order to understand that. So the telemetry of what's happening, to your words, the telemetry of what's happening really needs to be exposed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think a good example of that is, like, if you just use Claude as the example, right? I think it's the perfect example of like the convergence too, because Claude is a SaaS app. Like the actual thing on your desktop, if you use the desktop, that's a SaaS application, it's a subscription you pay for, you get a seat, actually, and you get tokens that you can burn through with your seat, right? On the FinOps side, they're going to care about engineers using Claude Code. Like that's where they're going to be focused on and understanding how they're using that and then do their job to distribute that cost out accordingly. But what about the marketer that's using Cowork to build a marketing campain?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just as important, right? Because they're going to be burning tokens in the same way that an engineer would. And are they using the right model? Are they, doing it responsibly? Did it actually create what they needed it to create? And I think all those things are going to be really important. And we'll have to really figure out how we attribute value to. Has
there been a trend where certain AI native apps are starting to eat into renewals? Because you guys do a lot of renewal management.
Sure.
We're talking about software states and tech states.
Yeah.
Managing licensing comes up, that's on the other adjacent sectors to FinOps.
Yeah.
But renewals come, I might not want to renew that.
Yeah.
How do you see that going?
Yeah.
Who's winning? Who's losing?
Yeah.
What's the winners look like?
The interesting thing, renewals used to be like, we called it the moment that mattered. I mean, it still is important for what we do, for seat-based licensing, because otherwise you couldn't change your contract. Like you were sort of stuck with, I bought 1,000 seats, I'm stuck with that 1,000 seats until my renewal, and at that point in time I can make some sort of change. Now true-ups and things like that come into play, which can affect some of that, but they're simply not true downs. It's usually you're going to pay for if you go over what your allotment is. Now that's changing with consumption pricing as well, because you're no longer tied to just that renewal and that moments that matter. You could blow your budget in a single day. I mean, we see it like a really good example of just like the non-AI version of that. It's like DocuSign with envelopes. Like you can buy envelopes and you can burn through all those envelopes really quickly and then be stuck paying 1.5 times what you agreed to in your contract. The same thing exists for AI-driven features as well, where there's some sort of consumption pricing model for it.
I'm just curious, Ben, if you've seen any changes on products, because one of the things, the SaaS apocalypse we had a lot of debate around, which we agree with you, by the way, is that the products have to evolve, because my answer to that was bad software always dies. But products are getting more comprehensive, more multi-capabilities. Are you seeing some of the customers look at their product portfolio and blending in either adjacencies, because sometimes a standalone SaaS product that you're paying for, like, okay, I can get that over here.
Oh.
Is that in the analysis?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got a big outcome that we drive for, and it's all around app rationalization. And so app rationalization, so a couple things. It could be you're buying the same app multiple places in your business, like consolidate your contract, but it could also be, hey, we have 2 apps that are very similar, that have similar capabilities, and we surface all that information so that you can then say, hey, why do we have 15 project management tools? We don't need 15. Yeah. We may need 5. We don't need 15. And then put a process in place to end those agreements and consolidate.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, in our 2025 research, we find that 75% of respondents indicate they're using 6 to 15 different tools for management. And so, to your point, right? So, and they don't want that. 54% of those respondents indicate they're in favor of a full stack, look without having all those tools.
Yeah.
So you're spot on. Yeah. I think that's really the right direction of where the audience, where the market is shifting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's harder to do than what it sounds, though, right? Like when I say you have 15 project management tools or your stats, we got to fix it. But you think about what it takes to then fix that.
Right.
You got change management. You got to move the users around. You got to align it to your contract term. You got to get procurement involved. Like a whole bunch of stuff.
And there was always reasons why there's 15 different tools.
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
It's hard as hell to come out of them. But not just contracts. That's not my problem right now.
Yeah. Right. I mean, you really need executive top-down directive to say we're fixing this problem, and like you guys have to figure this out and come together. I think
rationalization on the portfolio, optimization on cost, what drives productivity and revenue.
Yeah.
These are all kind of coming together here at FinOps.
Yeah.
And the Tokenomics Foundation, what's your take on that? That's pretty cool.
I think it's great. I mean, I think it's very smart of the FinOps Foundation to sort of carve that off and separate it, because it is different, and there's a different level of depth to it than what you have sort of in your normal cloud FinOps practice. Now, there's definitely crossover. Like there's some practices that are going to be the same, but I think having a dedicated group of really smart, bright people thinking out ahead of what is needed is going to be really important. I mean, I think everyone here is hungry for that. Like, help me understand what I need to do, and I think it was really smart of them to separate it out and have a different group.
Ben, final question for you. Advice to people who are seeing all the chaos. They know they got to lean in because there's a competitive advantage for doing it. If you're a company, what's your advice for people who are trying to get their arms around this market? Obviously, costs are flying everywhere. It's a top conversation with tokenomics. What advice do you have?
I mean, I think in general, it can be scary. Like, I think especially the tokenomics can be scary because it's so new and it's changing so fast. And but you have to get started. I think like that's the process is like get started, figure out where you can make an impact, and start there. And that's the same for SaaS too. I mean, when we come in and do discovery, when we find hundreds or potentially thousands of apps, it's overwhelming and people are like, I don't know what to do. It's like, well, let's help you prioritize where your biggest impact can be made and start there. Get some wins, get them under your belt, socialize them across your business, and then build the program out from there.
Business good?
Business is great, yeah. We celebrate our 10-year anniversary actually this year. Based in Indianapolis, which is the hotbed of Midwest tech, I guess. Nice. So it's great. Yeah, we're
awesome.
Enjoying it.
I've been on my bucket list items go to a game.
Yeah.
So Colts.
Yeah, come to the race actually. Come to the 500. That is.
All right. I'll send you a LinkedIn. Ben, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yep.
I'm John Furrier, Paul Nashawaty here on the ground floor here at FinOps. The market's changing. The demand curve for tokens, the demand curve for AI certainly is disrupting the innovation curve, and that's just rationalizing what you got, understand the cost of the new stuff, putting it all together. We're doing our part to put it together here. Thanks for watching.